Greetings. Okay, thank you, Josh. You're okay, sweetie. All right. I have an extra worship assistant today, John Schmidt, who is sitting right behind me, giving us a little early spirit there. I want to welcome you all to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I'm the Reverend Christian Schmidt, the interim minister of this congregation. Whether this is your first time with us or your 1001st, know you are welcome here. We're glad to have you. We're continuing to navigate how to best offer services in this time. We're glad we can provide this forum both in person and online today. And this is a time for us to find comfort. And in the words of our mission, recommit ourselves to supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, working for justice, caring for the earth, and building the common good. We gather each Sunday to recommit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression and injustice. It is good to be together. I want to thank and welcome a number of people helping me today with the worship service. Tom Teasley, just to my left, maintains a unique career as an award-winning solo percussionist, composer, and collaborator, a 6-time recipient of a Fulbright Hayes Grant for performances in the Middle East. Tom has collaborated with indigenous musicians and given historic performances at the invitation of U.S. embassies in the region. He's been an artist in residence at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts and collaborated with the National Symphony as a soloist and composer. He frequently tours worldwide, presenting educational clinics and performing. And specifically, this coming Saturday, he is offering a Healing Through Music event at the Lyceum. There is more information in the Commons available of that in a flyer form if you want to come and see that, be a part of that. I also want to mention, if you are a recent newcomer to MVUC, if you want to know more about us, we would love to get to know you next Sunday, that is July 24th after worship. We're holding one of our meet and greets. It's a great opportunity to chat with me and a few of our friendly membership folks right after service. We will meet in the nursery area, which is just in the same building, just kind of across the way. If the weather's nice, we may be just outside it so we can enjoy some food too. Please respond. There's information out in the Commons and also in our emails. Just let us know you're coming. It's helpful if we have some idea how many people are coming. Lastly, please continue to look to emails, phones, the website for continued updates about worship and all of our church happenings. Know if you are ever in need, we are just an email or phone call away. I invite us all now to take a deep breath and out as we enter into this time of worship. And welcome forward Brian McDonald. Oh, I also wanted to thank our pianist for July and August, Howard Breitbart, for being a part of the service today. Thank you.
And now for our lighting of the chalice. We light this flame in awe for the world, for ourselves, for one another. May the experience of the sacred, of the ultimate, of the larger than ourselves help us to remember to love our neighbor, to respect our world, to care for one another. May we let all into each of our lives. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing of hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. I invite you now to remain standing as we unite our voices to speak aloud the covenant of our community. These words are both known within our heart and are on our order of service. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. This is our covenant with each and with all. You may be seated.
Have a seat. Or not. Okay. So there's a slight misprint in the order of service. We're only doing one time for all ages this morning. I had a little miscommunication. Yeah. So I'm talking about awe today. That is A-W-E, in case anyone is having trouble understanding my accent. Awe. It's kind of a hard word to say. Awe. It sounds weirder the more you say it, too. And mostly, I hear people talk about awe in terms of the natural world or the universe, right? We're so awestruck by things like that. And I'm going to talk about that later. but I also wanted to talk about something made by humans that really just struck me. Awestruck is a word. There we go. Okay. And it was when I was in Paris about 20 years ago. And if you've been to Paris, you may already know what I'm talking about, because there is this gigantic metal pointy thing. It's huge, the Eiffel Tower. I don't think pictures do it justice, because when you're there, it is, it's very large, but it's very large compared to everything around it, too. Paris is not, by and large, a city of very tall buildings. It's a city of sort of medium tall buildings. And so almost the second we arrived in Paris, because you can see it from almost anywhere, you see this big pointy metal thing. And I looked up some numbers because I was curious if my sort of memory was correct. It's 1,083 feet tall, which is not that tall compared to modern skyscrapers, of course, but it was also built 140 years ago, almost. So at the time, it was not only the tallest structure in the world, but it was almost twice the height of the previous tallest structure in the world, that is the Washington Monument. There are 10,100 tons of metal in it. That's 20 million pounds. That's the weight of about 135,000 adults, give or take. And so it is just monumentally large. And from the top of it, you can see not only all of Paris, but for many miles around. And this is part of what awe means to me, that just the sheer size of it is impressive, but also the size in its setting. This is what it means to be awestruck by something, to be just completely overwhelmed by it, to be pushed back, to have like the wind blown in your face, which literally happens from atop the Eiffel Tower, but also figuratively, to be just struck by that. And so today I'm talking about the sensation of awe, and I'm going to talk about it in a lot of other senses too in a little bit, but I just wanted to leave y'all with that we can be completely awestruck by something that we might never have expected. All right. With that, I'm going to walk John back to Ari and any other, I don't see any other kids, but that's okay. And thank you so much.
We come now to the morning offering. Each week we share the plate with a charitable organization that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of July, our offering is shared with the Faith Alliance for Climate Action. The Faith Alliance for Climate Action unites people from 75 faith communities, and Faith Alliance Climate It works primarily at the local level, with the main focus being on Fairfax County. I invite you to contribute whatever you are most comfortable with to the Faith Alliance for Climate Action and to this church community. If you would like to write a check, please make it to MVWC, and in the memo line indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also go to our website to give directly. We're very grateful for your donation. During the offering, if you would like to light a candle of joy or concern, you are welcome to come to do so. And now will the ushers please come forward for the morning offering.
It's a lovely introduction to our time of meditation and prayer. I invite you to prepare yourself just for a moment to sink down into your seats, to breathe, to still our busy minds, and listen to these words from the Reverend Marta Valentine. In gatherings we are stirred, like the leaves of the fall season rustling around sacred trees, tossed hither and yon until we come to rest together, quietly, softly. We come to gather strength from each other. We come to give strength to each other. We come to ask for strength from the Spirit of all that is and is not. When our hearts sing, or when they frown, it is the way of compassion telling us to give. It is the way of peace telling us to share our gifts, for we are happiest and most powerful when love is made apparent in and through us. Spirit of the circle that is love, as we twirl in this dance that is life, we give thanks for reminding us each day of our task of ministering to each other. With a searching glance, a safe touch, a generous smile, a thoughtful word. Thank you for reminding us that we are always building our beloved comunidad. Thanks for reminding us that through our covenant with you, we covenant with each other and are made whole. In gratitude, we celebrate with open hearts and minds. We discover who we are separate from each other and within one another. In this circle that holds all life, may we ever work towards widening its boundaries until there are none. Amen. Paz. Blessed be. I invite you to remain seated and sing together number 123, Spirit of Life.
Today's reading is entitled The Messenger by Mary Oliver. My work is loving the world. Here the sunflowers, there the hummingbird, equal seekers of sweetness. Here the quickening yeast, there the blue plums. Here the clam deep in the speckled sand. Are my boots old? Is my coat torn? Am I no longer young and still not half perfect? Let me keep in mind on what matters, which is my work, which is mostly standing still and learning to be astonished. The phoebe, the delphinium, the sheep in the pasture, and the pasture, which is mostly rejoicing since all ingredients are here, which is gratitude to be given a mind and a heart and these body clothes, a mouth with which to give shouts of joy to the moth and the wren, to the sleepy dug-up clam, telling them all over and over how it is that we live forever.
Mary Oliver writes that my work is loving the world. I've been sitting with that. It took me back to a time years ago. I'm standing on the very top of Enchanted Rock, which is probably not a place many of you have heard of, but the view extends for miles and miles and miles. There's hills and scrubby trees, little plateaus, and the occasional ranch house or barn, and a few roads, almost all of them dirt. This is in central Texas, in what's called the Hill Country. And you can see so much from the top of this big lump of granite, which is what Enchanted Rock is. It's Texas pink granite, a huge, almost immeasurably huge piece of it. And on this particular day, there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. It was blue, absolutely perfectly blue, that particular shade of blue you see in the sky on clear days that doesn't seem to really exist anywhere else. Even in the paint store, I don't think they can copy it quite right. And so I look down the slope of this huge pink rock across to the other peaks, Little Enchanted Rock and Buzzard's Peak, and down to the stream below, which for once actually had water in it since it had rained just the night before. It's often so dry there that the creek bed is entirely empty. But today, on this day, the water is gently flowing. Flowers are in bloom, also a fairly rare occurrence there. And there are little fish swimming that I can't see from way up here, but I know that are there. I wonder where they go when there's no water. There must be pools somewhere, I guess. But way up here, hundreds of feet above the valley floor, the wind hits with a startling force. Down below where we started hiking, there was barely a whisper of it. But here, with no vegetation to slow it down, it's strong, so strong that even in 90-degree weather, it feels cool. On top of this relatively smooth piece of rock, there are tiny oases. A stubby tree grows in a pool of dirt and water. Grasses find any tiny bit of purchase they can on the granite slope. And some of those same fish, barely even minnows, are in that pool of water. And I have no idea how they got here. It's hundreds of feet from that stream. And it's a pool of water that's only there some of the time when it's rained. But here they are swimming away. And I was standing there on top of the world just taking it all in. The sense of something gigantic and amazing, and seeing everything that is so much more than I can hold in my life and my mind. And here's the point where I should probably tell you that I'm a little bit afraid. I don't like to use the word afraid. I just don't like heights that much. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that these moments of awe, by which I mean both awestruck and awful, happen to me quite frequently on top of the Eiffel Tower or Enchanted Rock or looking over the rim of the Grand Canyon. By the way, about 5 Eiffel Towers could fit in the Grand Canyon. That's how huge it is. I remember looking down and seeing a buzzard circling about 2,000 feet below me, which was a very strange thing. Anyway, back to Enchanted Rock. I'm standing there taking all this in, and for once, my mind is not thinking about anything, which is not my usual situation. Usually it's just going and going and going up there. And I think I'm not the only one who's probably had this issue. Our world doesn't have the time or freedom to just take in what's around us and hold it with a sense of awe. And I come back to that word awe because we do get both awful and awesome and awestruck from it. Awe means both terrible and frightening and amazing and wonderful. And in all of those cases, larger and deeper and more than any of us can truly, fully comprehend. In fact, it's in this sense that the Jewish scriptures speak of God. What we often hear translated as fear of God is perhaps better translated as awe in both the awful and awesome sense. For many of us, we experience this awe when we look at the natural world or at the universe. It's the majesty of nature we experience awe, this creation all around us, something to marvel at. I had another experience a bit like this years ago. We were still living in California at the time. There was the darkness and the night sky out on Castro Ranch Road, which is as much as you can get the middle of nowhere and still be near the Bay Area, near our home in Pinole. And I had a glimpse of this too in visiting the giant redwoods and Muir Woods there in the Bay Area, and as I said, in the Grand Canyon. And I get this looking out across Chesapeake Bay and certainly crossing that bridge, which takes a little bit of breathing, for sure, and so many other places. And this week, just this week, I had it looking at the images captured by the James Webb Space Telescope. Some of them practically in our own neighborhood, the clearest pictures we've ever had of Jupiter, which were incredible. But to me, perhaps more awe-inspiring, the images of thousands of galaxies, some of them 13 billion, give or take a little, light years away, which means the light has been traveling to us almost the entire time the universe has existed, because we think the universe is about 13.7 billion years old. And there are hundreds of these galaxies just in one little snapshot. So they have millions or billions of stars and some exponentially higher amount of planets around those stars. And this one photo was of a patch of sky that I'm told I know appears completely dark to us here from Earth. And I'm told that that patch of sky is about the size of if you held a grain of sand at arm's length. So that tiny little piece of sky. And that's what we can see, or the James Webb Space Telescope can see at least, in that portion of our universe. Henry David Thoreau, the famous writer who had grown up in a Unitarian family, he writes extensively about nature and his feelings about it. You may be familiar with some of that. He's captivated by how different it is from the things that we usually see and know. And at one point he says this about nature, and I quote, "It is difficult to conceive of a region uninhabited by people. We habitually presume his," and probably her, "presence too and influence everywhere, and yet we have not seen pure nature unless we have seen her thus vast and drear and inhuman, though in the midst of cities. Nature was here something savage and awful, though beautiful. I looked with awe at the ground I trod on to see what the powers had made there, the form and fashion and material of their work. This was that earth of which we have heard, made out of chaos and old night. Here was no garden, but the unhandselled globe. It was not lawn, nor pasture, nor mead, nor woodland, nor lea, nor arable, nor wasteland. It was the fresh and natural service of the planet Earth. As it was made forever and ever, so nature made it, and people may use it if they can. It was matter, vast, terrific. Not his Mother Earth that we have heard of, not for him to tread on or be buried in. No, it were being too familiar even to let his bones lie there. The home this of necessity and fate." It's from the Maine Woods. Now, I think Thoreau's not entirely correct. He was hardly the first person to be there. He certainly overlooks those who have come before him, both indigenous and European. But we can get perhaps just a glimpse of what the natural world might look like, even if it's not completely natural. Yes. I had talked about Enchanted Rock, and I still can't get over how massive it really is. It rises 425 feet above the surrounding valley in a roughly dome shape. But the truth is, that's nothing. That's only the part you can see, which is quite a small part of what is called a batholith, which is one giant piece of granite. That batholith covers about 100 square miles below a big chunk of west central Texas. That's as big as a number of cities, but under the ground. I can't even imagine how big that is. So when I think of nature, my mind goes to the Texas Hill Country. It's near where I grew up, where Enchanted Rock is. That's what I think of. It's the place where I can go to feel a little bit of that thing Thoreau was talking about. The sense of something we didn't make, but that was there before any of us and will probably be there long, long after us. I know Enchanted Rock is far from untouched wilderness, but it can feel like that. And maybe you have a place like that where you go to sometimes, to the coast, or up to the mountains, or deep in the forests. A place that feels both strange and familiar all at once. The world and this universe is so unimaginably large, so amazing, so much more than any of us can fully understand. And that's okay. Too often we, and maybe I should say me, I try to understand everything. I think that's a good thing. But sometimes understanding or thinking is not what we should be doing. Sometimes it's right to appreciate, to take that time, to smell the roses, as the phrase goes. So for right now, it's right to appreciate, to take in something wonderful, whether that's the majesty of our world or universe, or a great piece of art, or the wonderful music that we hear every week in the sanctuary. So this then are ways that we can access that sense of awe and perhaps too reverence. We see amazing things all the time, but it's easy to overlook them, to pass on by without any thought. We access that awe when we stop. When we stop and really look around us, allow ourselves to let our surroundings come into us, to fill us with a sense of awe, to allow ourselves to be moved and to move our very beings. When we open ourselves to beauty and wonder, we can experience that awe, and it can transform us for the better. And this is also what being in a religious community, what opening ourselves up to transformation is about. It's about allowing that sense of awe to enter us and transform us for the better into something new and different, into a better tomorrow. There's a really lovely piece by William Blake that's in the Gray Hymnal. It's set to a particularly difficult melody, or I would have had you sing it today. Instead, I want to read it to you. And this is actually just a very small chunk of the larger Blake piece. But I want to read it to you. He writes, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. And so this week, more than most, I've been reminded that we can truly, truly see not just a world, but almost infinite worlds in something the size of a grain of sand. We can view the whole universe with wonder. We are called, in fact, to be people who experience awe, to have reverence for life, for the natural world, for the very act of creation and recreation that we see in our world every single day. Reverence is the opening up of our very beings to that experience of the divine. And so in those tiny, tiny fish, high atop enchanted rock, I could see the universe entire. A tree at the side of the pool, the grass and algae, and those little fish skittering around the water. To see all the world in a tiny pool of water in the middle of a huge expanse of granite, which gently and then more strongly slopes down to the earth below. I say this to you that all of this matters, but I would be remiss to come preach this Sunday and not talk about some of the things that do not fill me with a sense of awe. I have watched our country descend into madness in many ways, that we are trying to destroy the very society we have created. The politics, the government, the sentiments I hear too much in our country that today pits others as the problem, that says that some people are different than me and less important and valuable than I am. These things both take away from the sense of awe I speak about today, and they replace it with other things, with fear and disgust and concern. And I don't know the answers. I don't know how to tell someone that they need to care about their fellow human beings more than their own checkbook or tax bill. I know we have to find a way, though. And I know that our concerns as Unitarian Universalists, or just as people, must be for each other. I spoke of seeing the universe in a grain of sand. We have to also see all humanity in the face of the very least among us, in our neighbor, in our enemy. So friends, I hope you find the time today to truly see the world in a grain of sand, to look at a flower and see heaven here on earth, to find a sense of reverence in our world and within yourself, to see creation for the gift it is, a garden here for us to take in, to enjoy with all our minds and bodies and hearts. Find that awe, embrace it with all your being, and may it be so forever and ever. Amen. I invite you to rise and body your spirit and join in our closing hymn, number 66, When the Summer Sun is Shining.
Join me in saying the words of our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
Friends, we hold infinity in the palm of our hands. We see all of us in the face of each of us. May we go forth to do good, to love one another, and to seek justice. Amen.